packet with the open meeting law, the conflict of interest, and the ethical policy for the town. On the last page of this first group, you'll find a sheet you can sign and give to me that shows you've received these. And then you can go online in the near future and take the ethics exam. Actually, it's now finally a municipal and not just a statewide exam, so.
They're good for 2 years, right?
Yes, so you may have already, I would have.
I did one last year.
I brought a gavel from whoever needs it. So, as I had on the posted on the agenda for tonight, the first order of business will be organizing the group. And by the way, I posted everything according to the law is what the town clerk does, so it wasn't as a commissioner that I was, setting the meetings and all that. It was as the town clerk. So, we're going to organize? Yes, Mr. Giannetti?
I would like to make a motion, if I could, Madam Town Clerk, I guess, Valerie, if I, from my perspective, I think the best person to lead the team effort, someone who has demonstrated over the years an openness, transparent way of working, thoughtfulness, being thorough through everything that the person does. I will make the motion that we elect Valerie Mulvey as chair.
Second.
Do I hear any other motions, any other nominations? Okay, then hearing no other nominations, I will take a vote. Or we'll take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And now I will take.
Let the record show 9-0 vote. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, now I will take a motion for the vice chair.
Okay, I would like to recommend Dennis Cardiff.
Second.
Are there any other nominations on the floor?
Yes, I would like to nominate Adam BLUMER.
Do I have a second? Okay, then I will call for the vote on Dennis Cardiff as vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And now I would like to,
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion for Adam BLUMER for clerk.
Second.
any other nominations? Okay, nominations being closed, I will take a vote on Adam BLUMER as clerk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So that's 9-0. Thank you. And now the next agenda item would be the process and the operations of this board, the Charter Commissioners.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Carter.
To start it off, I'd like to recommend that we meet on Monday nights in the Memorial Building, except for one night each month, 1 week each month, we meet in a neighborhood to be determined by the board each week, and so publicized, with the exception of when town meeting is in session. And I say that because I understand that we would be unable to have any television coverage while town meeting is in session.
Yes, sir. For Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, Mr. Rigo will be filming town meeting. And I did speak with him prior to this meeting. He said that it would be, he would be here on Monday nights for us, but it would be very difficult to get out into the neighborhoods on a Monday night to move all his equipment back and forth.
Right.
So he would prefer that during town meeting in session, if we're to meet, that we meet on Monday nights.
I don't see that as a problem.
What time?
7 p.m.
Can't meet, yeah.
And if we're doing something in the public, Madam Chair, I'm assuming we're going to have government station available to do taping at all times?
That's exactly why I
Okay.
spoke to Mr. Rigo, to make sure of his availability, because there was such an emphasis throughout the community meetings that we televised, and we assured people we would do the best that we could to do that. So I did follow up with him. I actually have spoken to him about specifically town meeting and Mondays as opposed. So thank you, Mr. Carter, for that. Yes, it's difficult for him to do the rest of the week. If I could take a break for one moment, if the commissioners don't mind, I think it would be important right now before we continue this process and operations item, if I could ask if Attorney Stefanini could inform all of us and everybody here tonight about the requirements of what we are required to do under Chapter 43B.
So I think everybody's familiar with it, and I won't bore people, but I thought it would be helpful just for the public and for ourselves to review some of the basics about Charter Commission. As I'm sure most folks know, Massachusetts is lucky to have the oldest constitution in the world, dating back to 1780, and it's the basis of our federal constitution. Just as the Constitution is the basis of our state government, a charter is the basis for the formation of our town government. And so this commission, in some ways, will take and form and go about the process of doing that. Article 89 to our state constitution sets up something called the Home Rule Charter Commission. It was established in 1966. There have been some 180 charter commissions around the Commonwealth. 88 of them have been successful in proposing charter commissions. So, as Framingham has learned, we've had 4 of those that have been unsuccessful. It is a lot of work in the details. A few things that are worth mentioning. First and foremost, for anybody who's interested, the Charter Commission is governed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 43B. And it's readily accessible online. It's something that folks can look at. What I've just handed out to the commissioners is something you can get. It's something the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development uses as an organizational guide to talk a little bit about Charter Commission. I have a few extra copies if folks are interested. I unfortunately didn't bring enough for everybody. There are a couple of specific things I'd just like to read so that we're all clear on it. First, defined by the general laws, charter, when used in the connection with the operation of a city or town government, shall include a written instrument adopted, amended, or revised pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 43B, which establishes and defines the structure of city and town government for a particular community and which may create local offices and distribute powers, duties, and responsibilities amongst local offices, and which may establish and define certain procedures to be followed by the city or town government. It also includes the ability to divide up the governments of the town. It also provides the ability to supersede or repeal special acts relative to the town that are not specifically prohibited from such repeal. So you'll hear a lot of discussion, I'm sure, as we get into the drafting phases of special acts and general laws adopted by the town. That will be an important area for us to pay particularly close attention. A couple of particular things. The Chapter 43B is very specific that we will meet in accordance with the open meeting law and the requirements of it. A quorum of the charter is 5 members. It requires 2 public hearings. The first public hearing must be within 45 days of the election, so approaching very soon. It meets all other procedural requirements, which means it needs to be posted in a local newspaper 10 days in advance at least. The second hearing to be held 30 days after the issuance of our draft report. It also provides that the municipality may provide us with clerical support and other assistance as they so deem, and it gives us a guaranteed minimum of $7,500 to be deposited into an account. It gives the commission the ability to raise funds from any sources or to solicit and secure additional funds from the community itself. I think that covers the pieces I wanted. If there are there any questions? If there aren't any, I'd like to, if it's okay with the chair and the commission, I'd like to make a couple of motions in accordance with that.
Yep.
That's fine, John. I just wanted to, I was remiss, and I should have done this at the beginning. If I could just interrupt for one moment. For those of you who may not know, I'd like to introduce all the charter commissioners, and I apologize for that. George King, Adam Blummer, Terry Banerjee, John Stefanini, I'm Valerie Mulvey, Dennis Giambetti, Jason Smith, Janet Lambruno, and Dennis Cardiff, and I do apologize to all of them for not naming
Before
them.
we do that, could we go back to the meeting times for a second?
Sure.
I had already scheduled town meeting member orientation for Monday night, and I would respectfully ask that we could skip next week since this is just the beginning and we'll be getting the organization, and I would really like to be at that meeting.
I can put that to a vote. I know the time, I'm just thinking in terms of some of the timelines that you just gave about budget. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Dennis.
just a couple points, I guess, that I think we're all going to be missing meetings over the course of the next
This
year.
is right at the
Let me just-
beginning. I've already
if I
done
can
this.
finish. And the week after is school vacation, so that means we would not be meeting again until the 25th. That's a whole month of meetings that we would not be able to have. So I would like to hold the 11th for that reason. I think we should keep the momentum going and get going. And like I said, over the course of the next year, there's going to be a lot of very important meetings that some of us are going to have to miss because of conflicts. But I'd like to get the thing going. So that was just my comment. In all due respect, I understand there's going to be some
If
things.
I had
but-
known, I would have scheduled it another time. Obviously, I didn't know, so
understand.
that's why I'm asking.
I understand.
That will be the second meeting where we'll really be getting into it, and that's
And
why.
Madam Chair, I'll miss the 25th because I've got something I scheduled that I didn't realize either. I agree with, I appreciate and understand the concern, but I do think we're all going to have scheduling conflicts, and I think we have to try to move with some cadence.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I'm wondering whether there's a way to, I know we can't start any earlier than 7, if we can't, but I'm sympathetic to Ms. Banerjee's position that it's early on in the piece. I'm wondering whether, A, if we can't make another time next week that works for television and things like that, is there a way to postpone yours to 8:15 or something like that, at least be here for an hour and 15?
It's called for 7 o'clock. It's an orientation. It's called for 7. It's going to be televised.
Challenges, you have town meeting, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
No,
Right.
not next week.
Not next week.
we could do it another night.
that's-
I have Monday
I
and
could not
Wednesday.
get another night in the building available. It is town meeting time, all
Monday's
the
not
boards and
gonna be-
committees are meeting, and I can't get it televised. I went through all that last week in the selectmen's, the day after the election, I was in the selectmen's office reserving rooms, and then I met with Ron Rigo to see when he could televise. Yes, Mr. King.
I agree with Mr. Giambetti, Mr. Stefanini. I think that if we have a specific time, I know there are some times I won't be here the 25th possibly either, but I think the idea of having the time, the Monday night and just working through it, if it's 7 or 7:30, I don't care about that. But I think, as Dennis said, we all have obligations, work and otherwise. So I think that, even though it's unfortunate, I think we should try to stick with
As
a
I said, I only
consistent
requested
schedule.
it because I had it planned. If I had known, I would never have scheduled it.
I hear no.
Yeah, sure.
Madam Chair, are you looking for a vote on this aspect, or what are we looking for?
Move the question.
Well, I'm going to move, I'm
Okay.
going to move Ms. Banerjee's request, and I will take a vote. It is our first meeting, and we're just kind of feeling our way.
Madam Chair, can I ask
Yes,
a
Mr.
procedural question?
Stefanini.
Mr. Cardiff had the floor, made a motion that we meet on every Monday night.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
So the
Mr.
motion
Cardiff.
is on that. The comment was, what I saw was a request for a friendly amendment.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I
It wasn't
missed that,
seconded.
Mr. Cardiff.
I will second Mr. Carter's motion for Monday evenings, and let the chair decide on a 7 or 7:30 start.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then, thank you. And
So-
now, Mr. Stefanini, back to you, I'm sorry.
So, a couple of things, and I can carve this up, or I can just efficiently just sort of tie them all together. But I would move that we, A, operate under Robert's Rules of Order, which is what the town has done and is recommended by MMA and others, so we have some procedural guidelines. B, adhere to the open meeting law, which is required by statute, but make that clear. C, post meetings broadly, meaning not just within the legal requirements, but try to make sure we're publicizing meetings so that there's participation. D, establish, ask the town to give us some space on the town webpage to post meeting minutes, documents, et cetera. E, televise and archive all sessions on the Framingham government channel. That's the right channel? Yeah. F, that time at the end of every agenda, that we make on every agenda time for public participation, subject to the chair working out the agenda. I'll stop there. And I can carve that out if people want to carve it out, but I didn't think there was anything controversial or difficult in that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Quick discussion, just
Discussion, yeah.
quick, sorry. We have A, B, C, D, E, and F. We're going to take them all in one motion?
I presented it that way because I didn't think they were controversial, but I can carve them out if you would like.
Fine with me, I'm just making sure everyone's on the same page.
Is that okay with
communication-wise.
Since I was unable to get anybody to take minutes tonight, could I have a copy of that?
I will.
I actually-
I'll make a copy.
Oh, you taking?
I'm
oh,
taking
thank
minutes
you,
right now.
Jason.
Yeah, I think there's a
I'm
bunch of us
assistant,
taking notes.
sorry.
So then I'll second. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page from a communication standpoint.
Can you read those one more time, John?
So, operate under Robert's Rules of Order, adhere to the open meeting law, post meetings broadly, meaning beyond just putting them on a bulletin board, establish a place on the town website. Obviously, that's subject to the town's assistance, but I don't know that that's a big request. Televise and archive all sessions on the Framingham government channel. And lastly, provide time in every agenda for public participation, subject to the chair figuring out where in the agenda it makes the most sense. Because it may be at the end on some meetings, it may be at the beginning on others, it may be in multiple spots in others.
I second in the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye. Next, I'd like to move that we convene a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 43B for Monday, May 2nd at 7 p.m. posted in the local newspaper. If you look at the calendar, there are 2 Mondays that fit into that category, that fit into the timeline of being acceptable. It's from the date of the election, so the clock is ticking and it needs 10 days' notice.
So,
We could do it the 9th if folks want to push it off
Yes.
another week, but I thought the sooner we start community dialogue and get community input, probably the better.
and the room available on the 2nd and on the 9th would be the Oblondy room, but it is available both nights. So, there's a motion made. Oh, yes, Mr. King.
I would recommend the 9th, just because I think to give us a couple more meetings to get a few things underneath our feet, because we're not going to be able to meet on the 18th, right, because it's a holiday.
Correct.
So we'll only have, 2 or 3 meetings before then. So I still think it fills well within the 45 days. It's only,
Right, the 45th is the 13th. Yes.
So I would amend the motion, unless there's objection.
No, I agree
Change
with
to-
George. Makes sense. A little extra time for us to get, yep.
Thank you. So the motion has been amended. Is it seconded?
I'll second the motion as the
Time is
9th.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, so the public hearing will be held on Monday, May 9th at 7 p.m. in the Oblondy room. Thank you.
The last piece I had relative to the statute, without getting into other things, was to request initial funding of $7,500 from the town while we develop an overall budget, which the town is required to deposit in an account within 10 days. So
Of
I
the
don't know that
election.
we need to make a request, but I think the polite thing to do is probably to make a request. So I would so move that.
Second.
That would be to the treasurer, by the way.
The treasurer.
Yeah, it'll go it'll go in the town accounts of
yeah.
the treasurer. Yep.
Okay, but I will meet with the CFO and then with the town treasurer. Thank you.
And,
That's been seconded?
Yeah, I second it.
Seconded.
Oh, this is for me to request from the CFO, the 7,500. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then, Madam Chair, I had 2 things that are not within the statute strictly, but I think are part of this procedure piece. The first is to request from the town council a list of all special acts relative to or general laws adopted by the town of Framingham. As I mentioned, when we write a charter, we'll have to know which of those are adopted, whether we're incorporating them or superseding them. And I think the sooner we can familiarize ourselves with what those are, probably the better. At some point, we should probably ask Mr. Petrini to come in and brief us on it. So I would so move that.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And lastly, and this is outside the statute, I would move that we create 4 subcommittees to solicit community input, facilitate presentations to the full commission, and research information for the commission's consideration, to be comprised of 3 commission members appointed by the chair, one of whom shall be designated as the subcommittee chair for each of the following: structure and style, legislative function, general government, communications. And my thinking on each of those four is structure and style, sticking with the theme of the Constitution, is looking at different forms of government and structures, not so much from the perspective of function, but more from the point of style, drafting. So we can all start to read and think about what are some of the options. Second, the legislative function, thinking about everything involving the legislative function and how we present that. Third, the general government. That's being all the little things that we otherwise miss. No disrespect to my colleague to the far left, the Edgell Grove Cemetery trustees, the library, the parks, all of the smaller entities that need to be addressed and represented as part of this. And lastly, communications, to make more robust our outreach. And I don't mean that to have any influence or control over individual members' opinions or thoughts, but rather more generically, what did the commission do? When is the commission meeting? Sort of how do we get out commission hearings and the like, above and beyond other things? That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Everybody understood? Any questions?
I have a couple comments. I think the idea of subcommittee certainly makes sense because there's a lot of detailed organization here. I think, though, that the specific function of them maybe is something we need to think about a little bit, because I'm not sure how we're going to go about what we're going to go about. I think that in some regards, obviously it's a very serious issue and we have to consider all aspects of all things. I think John captured a lot of things that have to be considered. But I think at some point the committee has to decide, do we want to build whatever we're going to propose from the ground up or from the top down? And what I mean by that is there's not, a million different forms. There are a million different forms of government, but there's not truly a lot of different forms of government. So at some point, do we look more broadly at first at the different forms of government that presently in the state, somehow come to a consensus on the direction we want to go, and then try to take that form of government, be whoever it is, I won't say anybody for an example, still not indicate any prejudice, and then try to adjust that for Framingham, and and then all those things that you just pointed out come in, or are we really going to try to build this from line one up? I mean, I don't know necessarily the answer. I mean, I kind of would rather see us build it from the top down, maybe a little bit, find something general, and then do all the things that John's mentioned over the last few minutes, from the special acts to the legislative to the general government or whatever. But to some extent, those things aren't separate either, I don't think. So I don't know. So I think the idea of subcommittees is great. The specific functions, I don't know if we can specifically delineate them right now. That's my only thought about it.
So, Madam Chair, I can just respond. I think those comments are well taken. I would say I don't see these groups as doing much other than, with the exception of the communications group, I see these three groups as gathering information and bringing it back. And I think I was just trying to think orderly about how we start to do that. So whether we start at the top and go down or the bottom and go up, until we start gathering information, we don't necessarily have to do that. And so rather than having 9 of us gather all of our own individual information, rather thinking, how do we start to think about these areas? I left out executive function intentionally, right, because we have all these people coming before us, and we'll work through that.
Who's coming before us?
Eventually, I assume we're going to see the different departments and folks.
Okay. I don't disagree, John, at all with the idea of the subcommittees going out to get the information. I just don't know if we're far enough down the road to know exactly what that information is. That's my only thought. But
so should we, I'm sorry, a little more conversation, but I'm glad to table and raise it at our next meeting.
Yes, Mr. Blummer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. King on this one a little bit, that I think inevitably at some point we'll form subcommittees. I mean, I don't think you can do a task like this without subcommittees. But on a stylistic point, I think we need to talk a little bit more big picture about, like, what do we want to accomplish first, and then second, then third, then fourth, and then see how subcommittees sort of fit in there. And I wouldn't want to give whether intended or not, I wouldn't want to give the impression to the public that we're further along in this process than we are, because we're not. So,
Only just
from
begun.
that perspective, I would say take the time. Let's hold off on the exact definition. If you want to have a more general, sense of the committee of, do we see a role for subcommittees in general in this process, be happy to support that, but just without the details right now.
So, Madam Chair, given the feedback, I would table,
I'm sorry, Ms. Banerjee?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I agree. I think that doing this is premature, and I would also ask that when the subcommittees are formed, that the chair ask us what we would like to do, not just appoint people to those committees. And I'd also like to go back to a procedural item, that when we're discussing something, you should please go around the room.
Yes.
Around
I
the.
have been trying to see the hands that were raised, so sorry if I missed any. Right. Yes.
So I would withdraw the motion relative to structure, legislative function, general government, and I'll raise that hopefully at our next meeting so we can start to think about how we do that, because I don't think it infers that we're at the end of the process, but I think we can't start the process till we start to gather. I would move that we set up a subcommittee on communications, because I think we need that right away to help inform the public of what's going on.
Comments? Yes.
I would be willing to help with that, chair that.
Communications, are you talking about dissemination to the public? Is that what you're talking about?
You were talking about robust outreach to the public, is what I have down?
So we're required by law to post, for example, the notice in the clerk's office. We're required on the hearing to do a notice in the
Right.
newspaper, but nowhere does that require us to post it on Facebook and
Twitter.
on websites and inform and reach out to the media and make sure the media knows that we're doing something.
Correct. So is that what you, Ms. Lambruna?
Yeah, I think-
Yes.
Suggested? Ms.
So
Just
are you
make some
proposing
comments. I
something
think-
like a charter commission Facebook page?
I think the suggestion is
I'm not-
very
I think Mr.
valid
Stefanini
in
is.
today's electronic media age.
I would say that we do. That way people will know. And even Twitter, just to update people what's going on.
Here's what I would suggest, if I could. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not suggesting, I don't think we should be looking at a website, a charter commission website by any means. I think my opinion would be, from a social media standpoint, use that as a way to, what Mr. Stefanini talked about, a robust outreach. And what I see quite a bit of a robust outreach would be the social media pages and so forth, which is not just posting it and then to a website that doesn't matter, and then to another website that no one's going to read. Social media to really increase the ability to have our residents come in, our taxpayers come in and see what the commission's all about. That's the way I read into Mr. Stefani's robust outreach.
What I was asking was, are you talking about having a charter commission Facebook page and Twitter page? Or are you
Like I
talking
said, I'm
about
not
doing it
talking about that at all, by any
individually?
means.
Oh, yes, what Ms. Banerjee is asking, if
Yeah.
we should, each of us individually be reaching out. Is that correct?
I don't think, I'm not sure.
So, if I could.
I'm not that sophisticated.
Yeah.
If I could,
Be
I would
learning.
suggest
I'm not on
this,
On my
Facebook.
website.
that we look to the chair to form a subcommittee on communication.
Okay.
That they develop a communication plan and decide what should be the elements of the commission. Now, it is individual commissioners, we can do whatever we want to do as far as communicating, creating our own page, whatever. But as a commission, as a charter commission group, we should have a communication plan. Let that group come out, adopt that, and bring it back to the full board for approval, and then they should implement that too. And so they have the ability to implement that. So that would be kind of my suggestion. If I could amend the.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Madam Chair, can I add some comment, if I may?
Yes, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. So I agree, I think on most of that. And I've already seen commissioners post stuff, but meeting time, so forth, come on out, it's the first meeting tonight, which is great. What I don't want to have is a situation where we have a Facebook page set up and 2 or 3 people are sending things out that I haven't taken a look at or approved, myself personally. So that's all I would say. So with that, given what Mr. Giambetti said, I agree. Set the subcommittee up, let them come back and talk about the ways they want to get this. Again, this is more about outreach than anything else, the way I look at it.
And then it leaves it up to all 9 commissioners to decide on what is presented.
I would also like to say that that kind of communication subcommittee is not mutually exclusive with the other 3, and we might want to talk about, or the subject matter that you were talking about earlier, that there can be 2 people, you can be on more than one committee.
I agree. Yes.
As long as we don't have a
Motion.
quorum problem, we're
Right, but
okay.
they're
Well-
not mutually exclusive.
I'll second the motion as amended.
Can I have a point of clarification,
Yes,
actually,
Mr.
Madam Chair?
Blummer.
Not, actually, maybe I might be breaking Robert's rules by asking it this way, but at least I'm
Well, we're
admitting
just
it.
starting.
Right, there we go. Just a point, since we're on the issue of communications, I just got a couple of notes from people saying they are not seeing this live anywhere. Is that surprising, or is this
I'm
being
getting the
recorded?
same.
Ron, is it supposed to be
very
on live, or are we
surpri-
taped
Yes.
tonight?
No, this
It's
is,
being taped.
it's being taped tonight?
Yes, it's being taped
I'm
tonight.
sorry, I
It's
misunderstood.
not-
I thought
it's
this
not
was
being-
live.
No, it's not live tonight.
Can you shake for taped? Shake for taped? Taped.
Oh, yep, they tape.
Oh,
So, Madam Chair, just we're just getting, it's hard to plan things when we can't meet.
I'm
you know,
very
at
sorry
that
about
point. So,
that.
at that point, I have
thought we were being-
immense sympathy on that one. I just want to make sure that we try our best by the end of the night, if we can, before we leave, to be able to tell people when they'll be able to watch this, although I guess
I
if they
apologize, I
can't watch it,
misunderstood.
they won't
I was
know
told
that
we
we're
were
saying it.
live.
So we'll make sure that people know through the media and whatnot when they can see this.
And our intent going forward would be to be live whenever possible, right?
We will be live whenever possible. That's why Monday nights.
Right.
If we
No,
go
it
off
makes
site,
sense.
we're taped, but it's
Sure.
played the next, yes, right. Thank you, because I was assured Monday nights we would be live.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize
Except
for
tonight.
interrupting there.
Except, which I don't know how I missed that.
Somebody's watching great old planning board meetings right
Yeah.
now.
Old ones.
Okay, so now on the motion as amended, which I no longer, I believe the motion as amended, it leaves us with a communications
Communications Subcommittee.
subcommittee.
So I move that we create a communications subcommittee to devise a communications plan to report back to, appointed by the chair, of 3 members appointed by the chair, one of whom shall be designated as the subcommittee chair, to report back to us with a plan, for a communications plan for the entire commission's approval.
I can have that in writing, please, later?
Yes, I'll put that
Thank
in
you.
writing.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, moving along.
That's all I had.
For process and operations, but I believe that I interrupted your
That's okay.
earlier
More
motion.
important.
Thank you, Mr.
Madam
Cardiff.
More important. Just some more procedural things. I would like to make a couple of motions. To authorize the chair to obtain from the town or hire a part-time administrative person to take minutes, post meetings, and to assist the chair with general administrative duties.
Second. It's about as important
Do I
minutes
have
as
any
we're going to
com-
see
any-
over the next year, so.
Anybody wanna- Okay, all those in
I was
favor?
going to suggest
Aye.
it myself.
Thank you.
On the favor? Is that what you said, Madam Chair? I didn't hear you. I apologize.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And
Did I
last-
get a second on that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr.
Thank
Smith
you.
seconded
I did.
I'm
that.
sorry, I was,
It's okay?
And
not
lastly,
getting
I'd like to
administrative.
authorize the, motion to authorize the chair to solicit proposals for a consultant to assist us in researching and developing a report to the community for the commission's review and develop an overall budget for the commission.
Second.
in writing? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anything else, or do I dare ask Mr. Cardiff if there's anything
I
else? Okay, so,
May
Would
I,
anybody
was that,
like
was
to-
your consultant that you're proposing to help us in our deliberations, or you said
Yes.
only in the final report?
Yeah, I've taken the liberty to contact the Collins Center, which is affiliated with UMass Boston, and they offer consulting services to assist the Charter Commission with developing the actual charter. And I'm not saying that we would have to use the Collins Center. They're very well received in other communities. But there are other folks that do that as well. So this is kind of a general,
yeah, because we had somebody here when the Metro West Daily News, right? Was she Collins? I don't.
Yep. She was
Okay, thank
She was
you.
excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
and incidentally, if we did use the Collins Center, because they're a state affiliate, we would not have to go through the RFP process.
True. Yeah, if they're state affiliated, correct.
And someone no ties to Framingham. Love to hear their input without having ties to Framingham.
Right.
Anybody,
all I
while
have.
we're under process and operations, any other commissioners wish to propose anything or discuss anything?
Snacks around 7:30 on Monday nights would be good.
Supplied by?
Second.
Okay, then, I guess we can, I have some information just to provide to the commissioners that I have, if we want this, if we depending on how often we want to meet. I have already booked for the 11th, the Oblongi Room, for the 25th, the Oblongi Room, for the 2nd, the Oblongi Room, for the 9th, the Oblongi Room, this is May now, 16th, the Blondie, and for the 23rd of May, the BLUMER Room. I have not booked anything as yet during school vacation week. I wasn't sure how the commissioners felt about that, but I have been told that there are rooms available
It's a
where there
holiday,
can be
though.
Monday is a
I know,
holiday.
I know
Oh,
Monday's a
I see,
holiday.
so a different
However, all
Monday,
the rooms
yeah.
are available all week, so it wouldn't
Oh,
have
right.
to be a Monday necessarily,
Very
if you
good.
want to
Good point.
contact me or talk about it. I don't think we need to meet 8 weeks in a row every week. However, I booked the room so we would have rooms. We would have that option, and it will be televised, and I'll make sure it's, well, I'll check.
Madam Chair, can you just read that list of where, again? Like, you start with-
Okay, and I can send this out to, okay, it's April 11th. Yeah, they're all in the Oblongi,
Or,
except for the 23rd of May, which is BLUMER.
that's easy to understand.
Yes, sir, Mr. Giambetti.
John mentioned earlier, kind of struck an idea. He mentioned about bringing in folks from the executive branch and presenting, and
Yes, he did.
seems like a pretty good idea, something we probably should think about fairly soon, to bring them in to give us a kind of overview of, some of the things we need to look at is, the responsibilities, the powers, the authorities, and of the executive branch, and obviously you have to look at the legislative branch too, as it complies today. So I wonder if it may make some sense for the chair to appoint somebody to reach out to the town manager and see if he can come in, kind of give his overview of the executive branch, and then maybe start having some of the division heads come in.
Are you volunteering for that?
That was going to be my question.
I think, as a procedure, we should have the chair kind of choose folks to do the task, so we kind of have organized. But I think it's a good idea. I think John mentioned it, and I kind of like that idea of bringing folks in so we can get a kind of a feel of the current view, the current powers, authority of how our government is constituted, so.
Any discussion?
I would move that the chair appoint Dennis Giambetti,
Second.
if she so chooses, to arrange for members of the executive branch, the division directors, to come in maybe a couple at a time, starting with the manager, to give us an overview, if that's a acceptable amendment, a motion to the chair.
Second?
I second
I just have
Discussion.
a bit of discussion first on that.
Yes, discussion, please.
I kind of feel the same way about that as I feel about the request for subcommittees. It needs to happen, but I need one step up first, which is, I think I'm trying to wrap my head around what goes first here. What are we trying to, who are the first group of people we're reaching out to? What are we trying to accomplish first? I tend to think about, I want to figure out how we're reaching out to the public to know what they want. It can all happen. I mean, the issue here is that they can kind of happen in any order because we need them all at some point. I need to know from the public sort of what are they feeling about how the government of the town is working or the community is working, what's working well, what's not working well, from sort of the public point. So I need to kind of wrap my head around how we're going to do that. At the same time, I need to know everything that Mr. Giambetti just noted about what people who work inside the government feel is both what their role is and what they see as the strengths and weaknesses of the current system. So I guess I would say I'm fine for empowering Mr. Giambetti to do that, or whomever the chair chooses. I just would ask that I might be satisfied with a general heads up that person contact those people and say it probably won't be April 10th. We need that. It might be later in May or some other time to be determined, but we kind of give them a heads up that we're going to be calling on them at a
Can I
date
make
to
a
be
suggestion?
determined.
I agree with that.
I don't agree with that. I think you're right that we have all this information we have to gather and we have to scramble it together. But I, for one, don't think you can start cooking till you have all the ingredients. And so I agree with George. At some point, we're going to have to come up with, are we starting at the top or the bottom? But I don't know that you can really start at the top or the bottom until you first have the ingredients at the table to figure out what you're looking at. And I would say, first and foremost, if we're going to put together a plan of Framingham government, we need to hear what citizens think is needed, but we also need to hear from the division directors because they're part of the plan. So the plan will ultimately include a Public Works division or not. It may include other departments, and so we're going to have to hear from all these people, whether it's tomorrow or 6 months from tomorrow. But the sooner we start getting data and information, the sooner we can start processing it. And I don't think, given the fact we have a blank canvas right now, I don't think we should be picking and choosing about it. We should just start the data flowing in, because it's going to take us a few months of data collection to get there. So does it really make a difference whether, we're seeing the Public Works Director on Monday, 4 Mondays from now, 10 Mondays from now? I do know that it would be good, as our first meeting on the subject, to hear from the Chief Executive of the community, which is the Town Manager. I think that's respectful, and I think it's the appropriate thing to start with. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Giambetti?
Yeah, my thinking was simply to get a base of knowledge for the commission, right? And we're all coming from different degrees of information, of how the current form of government works and what the powers are and so forth. So really, it was just trying to level set all of us of what is the responsibility of the town manager, how his authority, and how wide is it, and how deep is it. Also, from the division perspective, what's their authority and powers? So we all have an idea of, because we're all coming from different amounts of knowledge. So it was usually just a level set from an executive, and I thought it was kind of easy to do because it's set, right? And as we try to figure out the bigger questions that you have, Adam, this kind of fills the void somewhat of giving us some information as we run parallel courses as opposed to serial. That's all. That was really my thinking.
Yes, Mr. King?
I think one of the dangers we run, though, is I certainly want to be respectful and understand, what everybody's duties are and what they're doing. At the same point, a lot of people here, looking around the room, maybe 5 of you have been selectmen at one point or the other. I think the one nice thing about this committee is people have a pretty good idea how this government works. They may not know every in and out of it, but they have a pretty good idea how this government works. So I don't know if we need to spend weeks or months educating ourselves to the minutia of how the government works. I don't object to bringing in the town manager, having, as the executive, and having his presentation. And I certainly have a lot of respect for the division heads, but I don't know that we need that level right now. I mean, because if you look at the different prongs of the government, why that's a prong essentially under the executive branch. So if we're going to look at it starting more broadly, I don't know if we should dig down that deep into the executive right away. I agree. Eventually, maybe we can and have to and should. But I think maybe starting out, because otherwise, if we have every division head in here with the town manager, we're going to spend hours and hours and hours up front just learning stuff or hearing about stuff that I think most of us generally know. So I think, we get to a little more detail, that might be the time to do that. So I think the idea of having the town manager is fine, but I think going to that deep right away, I'm not sure that ignores a lot of other prongs of government. If we're trying to understand the present government, that ignores a lot of other aspects of the present government.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you. I would say it a little differently. The public elected 9 people to know, and as Mr. King said, maybe 5 folks know, but all 9 know.
No.
So that's one of the points I would say is important to me, that the 9 people in the room know the same information, not just 5 of us that have served on the board. I want consistency for not only public participation, but for everybody that's serving, putting all the time and effort into this. Therefore, I like what John's getting at. My question is really, and I wanted to comment on that, and I kind of see where you're coming from, George. Yeah, I mean, I think I understand it pretty well. I'm sure others do as well, but some haven't served in that selecting capacity. As a town manager, you certainly have seen that piece too, but others, Adam's been on the school side quite a bit. Maybe he doesn't have that inside that he wants to know a little bit more about.
I agree, Jess. I wasn't suggesting
No, I know. I'm just making a comment. That's all I'm saying is that I think all of us having that same information will just be helpful in the long term of the process. My question is this. We have a lot of things on the table, and I've never been on a charter commission before. So what is step one? Where has step one been to start in other charter commissions? Because we got great ideas and so forth. What have other charter commissions started with? Now, I know Mr. Carter served on one, but I haven't. So I'm just trying to articulate where they've actually started. That could be a reference for us to take a look at as well, because these things here, while I actually agree with what Mr. Stefanini said and a piece of what Adam said, not all of it, but a piece of that I understand as well. I want the public involved, but I don't want them coming in asking this Charter Commission questions and we don't have the answers, and then they have to come back a second and third time. I'd like to have the answers for the public as much as we can, and I'd like to set up a parking lot. One of my ideas on the parking lot is, like George said, we got one board that we know everything about, or we think we do, and another board that we need to ask questions and answers about, and that's important to me because this way it's an open, transparent process the whole time.
Madam
Just to
Chair.
clarify what I was saying, I just suggested that everyone here has a broad knowledge of the
Sure.
government. I wasn't specifically saying you knew about being selectmen and maybe the rest of us don't. That wasn't what I meant. I meant everybody here has pretty deep experience in the government, so they know a pretty good amount about it. Not everybody knows the same thing, I concur.
I'm not sure that.
Can I just ask for clarification, Mr. King? I think what you were suggesting is maybe some of the executive that we put off until later in the process.
I'm
Looking
not
at
even
our
sure
own-
myself what I was suggesting now, but I think that we should avoid just. I mean, I don't know. I think we should start with the town manager, maybe decide after that. I don't know.
Well,
Oh,
that
so-
was the
so
point I
thank
was
you.
going to
That
make.
was-
I think, out of courtesy, you made the right, Mr. Stefanini alluded to, I think it's, would be, do this board well and courteous to invite the town manager in first, as soon as possible, to at least give us an overview of his thoughts on what this commission is going to do and how it's going to do it, and why we're here and what we're going to do, so that we have a two-way dialogue. He does have to approve services to this commission, so I think the sooner we establish a working relationship with the gentleman, the much better off we'll be.
I don't think the town manager is here to tell us what the commission should be doing. I think we want to hear from the town manager what's going on from that perspective. And I think that having everybody come in is, again, it's a little premature. I think we want to do a little bit later in the process.
And what is your suggestion for, why is it premature?
Well, I think we want to know more questions. I think with having the town manager come in is a good idea, but I don't think it's up to him to tell us what the commission should be doing.
I didn't mean it that he would tell us what the commission was doing. I was make a working relationship with the gentleman.
Okay.
We're going to be soliciting funds to fund some of this, and we need a relationship with the town manager, not.
That I agree with.
Madam Chair, I would just like to respond to, and maybe it's a little academic, but I think it's really something that we as a group need to talk about a little bit, which was the question that Mr. Smith just raised, which is, what is the procedure and how does this work? And so having looked at a bunch of different commissions and read the statute, the answer to the question is there is no answer. So the answer is this group is charged with coming up with a product. And that product is a structure of government with procedures to govern and division of the powers and duties of the community with whatever statutory authority that we want to propose. And to present that into a report that gets presented and sent out to voters and ultimately a question on the ballot. And what I would say is this, is that we can all have different answers to this question because there is no answer. But from my perspective, I would throw out to my colleagues that I think about this as an educator. And I think about it from a lesson plan perspective, which is it's not just for us to be educated, but it's for us to educate a group of people in the community as we go along as to what decisions we're making, why we're making them, and how we're making them. And I think that we cannot begin to think about how to divide the powers of the government until we understand a little bit more of the powers that exist today, number one, and number two, what the public thinks, which is the public hearing we have coming up on the 9th, as to what they think relative to the various powers. So I would say, from my standpoint, I see it as a lesson plan, and I think Mr. Giambetti's suggestion, I think getting the town manager in is great. There are, how many division directors?
At least nine,
Nine?
maybe 10.
I think it's
At
nine.
least 9.
Could be wrong, but I think it's nine.
Getting some folks in, at least some of the major folks, to talk about some of the major functions in the town is going to help us think through things that we have to go forward on. So, for example, there's a law that allows for a strong chief or not a strong chief for both police and fire. Listening to them and hearing and understanding how they operate and what they do and what's worked well and what hasn't worked well. Granted, all we're going to hear from these people are their opinions. And ultimately, it will be for the 9 of us to decide which of those opinions we side on. But I, for one, am interested in hearing the more information come to us rather than us debate something that we don't really know the answer to. And I think of it as like a lesson plan. So I think we need to set that out. I throw that out for provocation and discussion.
Comments? Anybody? Mr. King?
I don't want to seem like I'm not interested in that information, because I certainly am, okay?
You know everything, I know that.
Yeah, right. I know very little, so, especially in this arena right now. But the point you raised, like, for example, you just raised the strong chief, weak chief idea, okay? I agree. That is an important part of the eventual product, okay? But all my question is the timing. So maybe it's kind of like a different statement of Jason's question. Do we interview all these people first? And if we do, why them? I mean, why wouldn't we bring all the standing committee chairmen in, for example? Because they have roles in the government too. They're all parts of the government.
But they have lesser roles, much lesser roles than the town manager, and much lesser roles that the standing committee on public safety doesn't have the same role as the police chief.
No, but it's a different aspect of the government, and the idea of separate but equal. So that's all I'm saying. So we're focusing on the executive operating part, and I think we're not on other areas. So I think if we look at more at the top levels and then work down as we need to, as opposed to working all the way down, I'm just not sure what the purpose of getting to that level of detail at the beginning is. Maybe there's a reason for it, but I'm just not sure why we want to get to all that detail, which we may not even remember later on. Now,
We'll remind you.
I appreciate that.
Banerjee.
I'm just wondering if we should have somebody come in, maybe a consultant of some kind even before, to help us with this process of trying to figure out which way to go and how to go about this process, because we're going to spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. And if somebody who's already done it before could give us some options and different ways to do it, then we'd have maybe a better road plan.
Madam Chair, all I would say is I don't think we need to spend a lot of money, time, and energy for somebody to look at this as an academic exercise from an external perspective. We need to learn about this community, the people in this community, the functions in this community. And it's nice to know how police chiefs work generally, but I'd really like to hear from this police chief what has worked well, what hasn't worked well, and how that relates to the structure of government, the reporting requirements, not the operation of the department. I don't think we should get into those issues, but there are a lot of things from an operational standpoint that I think would be helpful to know. I think, for example, municipal finance, which is a dry subject, with the exception of George, probably most of us haven't spent a lot of time in that area. I think it would be helpful to, as soon as possible, hear from the CFO about municipal function and what things are going to impact debt service, our bond rating, how we are going to overall look at a multi-year capital plan. Should we require it be a 5-year, 10-year, or multi-layered capital plan? But I don't know that I can start to have more than an uneducated opinion without first hearing what people want, and two, what we have, while we simultaneously research what are the options that exist out there. And I can go department by department, but there's so much for us to start to get into. My suggestion is we start to get into it and we pick the executive as a way to do it. And part of what I thought was the genius of Dennis's suggestion is that, frankly, our legislative branch is getting ready to do our legislative function. And I think when town meeting's over, we'll hear from the legislative department and we'll be able to go through those things as well. But I think we need to hear from all those people.
I agree. I'm not saying that we don't need to hear from them, but I think we are floundering on a road plan, which way to do it and what should come first.
Mr. Cardiff?
I think it's, naturally, we're floundering. It's our first meeting. If we do nothing tonight, we're not going to have a very good second meeting either. So we need to do something tonight, and I would suggest that we make a motion here to at least bring the executive.
So I made a motion, I will reread it. The motion is for the chair to appoint a member to be a liaison to the executive branch to arrange for the town manager to come in as soon as practicable, and for other division directors to come in
As needed.
or as appropriate.
Second.
I'm just going to
Comments?
I'm going to comment on that,
Mr.
Madam Chair, and then I'll move on.
I'll write something down, I promise.
I think this, except for with exception from Mr. Cardiff, no one's ever stirred on the charter. So if this means that's our starting point, let's grow from that starting point and move forward from that starting point. I'm going to do a little bit of research myself, and I'm just curious as to a couple of the other communities that we've talked with or I've talked with, just to see a starting point. But I like the starting point. It makes sense. I mean, we could throw 100 different things back and forth tonight and have conversation around, is this the right person to start with? Is this the wrong person to start with? But I'm going to move forward with and agree with Mr. Carr's recommendation here, and then try to think as that individual comes in, the cart before the horse, the chicken and the egg, all those fun things that we always talk about, and kind of put those into perspective as we move forward. So I'm going to agree with Mr. Cardiff and move forward with that vote. We have to start somewhere, so.
And I seconded.
The motion was Mr. Stefanini's. Am I
Right.
losing?
No.
Mr. Stefanini
He gave an overview.
Okay.
I think Dennis made the motion specifically, Janet seconded it, and I just added my comments to it directly.
It's to bring the town manager in first.
Right, oh, okay, so.
As a
Mr.
starting
Cardiff's
point.
motion.
I wrote
Janet
that, yeah.
second. Okay. Any comments on that? Okay. Vote comes on Mr. Cardiff's motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Yes, Mr. Giambetti.
Yeah, here's just add one point. I think one of the things that we're learning tonight is that we may have a lot of knowledge about our current form of government and how it works and so forth, but we don't have, besides Mr. Cardiff, who served on the Charter Commission, is the process and how should we approach the issue, right? How do we get to the end game, and what are the things we should be looking at first, and and give us some guidance. Somebody who's done this before, probably in other communities, give us some guidance. And I think the notion of a consultant will help us a
First
great
step.
deal. Pardon?
Although some of my colleagues on here may not agree with that, I think going through this process without a consultant would be the demise of
Right.
our.
And that's
Oh, I-
just what Ms.
Yeah,
Banerjee
I
said.
didn't,
That's
but
just
I
what
didn't
Ms.
mean to have
Banerjee
I mean,
said.
No, I know.
I'm talking about having somebody come in, maybe give us an overview of different approaches that we could take.
And I think.
So my
and
point
I-
is.
Yes.
We don't have to spend the next 3 meetings
So
figuring that out.
My simple point is this, is that we should try to get that on a fast track as best we possibly could to get
Absolutely.
somebody in there. So we need a budget, a scope of work, and to bring somebody in to so the faster we get that, the faster we can then have a discussion of how do we proceed? I mean, we're all
think
floundering in a sense because we've never done this before.
I
So-
think that was Mr. Cardiff's motion.
Yes, right.
we
So I think we should my point is that we should put on a fast track as much as possible to get somebody.
Madam Chair, can I add on to that just really
Yes.
quickly? I couldn't echo Mr. Giambetti's comment strongly enough. For me, we have to remind ourselves, there's only one thing we know. We know that people in town voted us to have a discussion.
Correct.
We don't know what they want us to do. We just know that they've empowered us to have a multi-month discussion that produces a plan for government that they will ultimately decide whether it's wiser than what we have now or not. From my perspective, the consultant is going to tell us in their experience, his or her experience, what's the best way to kind of go about this. Now, does it really matter if you go A, B, C, or C, B, A?
Right.
Probably not in the end of the day, but I don't want to get down to L and have a consultant come and say, oh, you're doing that now, you shouldn't have done that until 3 months from now.
And I believe that's the point Ms. Banerjee was
Exactly.
making.
Exactly my point.
And then my only other point on this is, I just want to be clear, at least from my own perspective on this, that yeah, we just scheduled a public hearing by law what we need to do
Yes.
in May. But if that's all we do for public outreach about what they want, then we will have failed before we've begun. I mean, so there are a number of ways one can go about soliciting feedback from the public, from electronic to having sort of meetings where people talk about, at a big picture level, what's the biggest value they want out of their government? Is it efficiency, or is it checks and balances, or is it something else? We need to do a bunch of those, because I can't make a decision about. I can't even listen I can listen to the town manager and a bunch of people, but I can't listen to every department head as effectively as I otherwise might, unless I kind of know what people are wondering about what they want from their government. I'll just listen in a different way. It's never bad information, but it would be more useful if I have a better sense of what the public is thinking about in terms of strengths and weaknesses.
Well, that's why I thought it would be better to do it a little bit down the road. I think having the town manager come in is a good idea. We voted on that, but doing the rest of it, let's get it in perspective before we go ahead and do that.
May I ask you a question, Mr. Carter? If you contacted,
I'm about to make a motion on that.
oh, okay.
I'd like
just
to make a
wanted to ask
motion
you-
that we
okay, go ahead.
authorize the chair to arrange for the Edward Collins Jr. Center to send a representative to our next meeting.
Second. Just to speak to that briefly, I agree. That was my concern really about the whole division head. I don't want to be running down rabbit holes we shouldn't be down until, so I think if we go the approach that Dennis said, and this Dennis suggests that we do next week, makes the most sense.
Well, I
Invite
think,
them to come in
Then
next
and if we
week.
have others, we can bring in for the following meeting, but I think to get the ball rolling, we know this outfit, we know that they're well-respected, and I think getting them here, the sooner the better.
And they would be willing to come, Mr. Carter, without a
Have a
contract?
letter
with-
right from them, so they'll be
I
here.
would suggest that we have a couple people come, because we may want to make a choice between people, so.
Well, truthfully, I'm having problems finding others that are available to come, so,
This is free
I'll
of
work with
charge?
the chair to do
Informational to us, free of charge?
yes.
I think it's a good start with the
I do
Collins
too. I
Center.
think it's a
Well,
great
that's what I was
start.
suggesting, not a consultant. I used the wrong word. I was just thinking about somebody who would come and give us an overview.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you.
And I think the other thing we need to do as soon as possible is to begin the process of bringing outsiders in, so that we know what the process that those charter commissions went through in these other communities. And I think that was tremendously helpful the last time, knowing at least the procedures that have to take place. Although the Collins Center will be able to assist us with the actual procedures and the details and the minutia of the charter itself, I think we want to hear from other communities on what they've, gone through. So I think the sooner that process starts as well, the better off we'll be.
Colleen, yes, and did you have a motion regarding Collins, or?
Just made
I
that.
made
You
it
may, oh.
and seconded.
Oh, sorry, I'm
Oh, you
losing track of,
Didn't
I'm
say
trying to
how
write
you
down
did it.
all my
Dennis made it.
tasks for tomorrow.
Madam Chair, Dennis made it, Mr. King seconded it.
Thank you. Thank goodness this is being taped, huh? Any more comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Smith?
So I've been taking as many minutes as I can, and we talked about the
Assistant.
process neighborhood, we talked about the government station, the start times, Chapter 43B, Monday start times, we went through the Roberts rules down to time agenda, talked about the next meetings, the initial funding, the special acts to adopt, talking about council for a meeting, creating the subcommittees, but we kind of skipped over this, authorize the chair to find someone for the minutes, and it was right there, authorize the chair to bring in a consultant. And I think right from there, I think we missed that as a group. It was already, we talked about this at 7:57.
That was Dennis's first motion.
So at 7:57, which was 20 minutes ago, had we just taken Mr. Cardiff's motion there and approved that,
all this?
we would have had that. But I still think
We did
as a-
take his motion. My comment was to put it on
Add
the
to
fast
it,
track.
right, yeah.
To put it on a fast track.
fast track,
and that's
correct.
the,
Specifically for next week.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
You
if
just
we
added
can,
the
that'd be
time
great. So
sensitivity
just,
to it.
again, through the minutes, I think sometimes we can see, it was already made, that motion, now we can move forward with it.
Thank you.
Stenographer.
I have attempted, I have gone to the selectman's office, I have gotten names of past employees, I've made calls, they've all been no's, so if anybody can recommend somebody to take minutes, I would really appreciate the recommendation, thank you. Have we concluded with the agenda item process and operations? Are we ready to move on? I'm asking the 9 commissioners. Any other comments on anything tonight?
I think we have, Madam Chair.
What was the next?
So I don't know if there is any new business, but I will certainly open that up to discussion among the 9 commissioners.
It's all new.
It's all new, you're right, Ms. Banerjee.
I have, if,
Yes, Mr. Smith.
Madam Chair, if we're going to bring the Collins Center in, they're going to come in and give some information to us as well. I think, to me, that would be a perfect opportunity to have the public ask questions as well, as they have before, when we had it in this room a month ago or so.
With the Metro Steel
Yeah, I
News,
think if we're going to bring someone from the Collins Center, that would be a great evening to hear feedback on some things the community are thinking about. We just recently had an election. We just recently, overwhelmingly, 82% of voters wanted a commission formed. So let's make sure we remind those 82% of folks, or the others as well, to come out, hear what they have to say from a process standpoint, maybe get some feedback.
Since that will be an informational session as opposed to us making actual decisions on anything, I'll take what the board has to say, but that's a good recommendation, Mr. Smith. Mr. Carter?
I don't have any comments.
Okay, anybody else?
Just quickly, Mr. Smith, just rephrase that a little bit for me, make sure I understand it. So in that sense, Cullen Center or someone would be coming here to talk to us about services they provide to charter commissions, and in past experience, that's sort of what you would be doing in an interview situation when we're sort of interviewing them to see if we want to hire them.
Right.
You're also suggesting, just for my own clarity's sake, that this would be a time where the public could ask questions to the Cullen Center rep about what? That's what I want to know.
Well, let's say during the interview with the town manager, and we all go through interviews and so forth, the public had a question that someone didn't bring up that they thought was pretty thoughtful, and the chair, in her wisdom, said, you know what, let's hear a couple of feedbacks from the public because they voted it. Why not get a little bit of feedback from them as well? What I'm trying to create is more public participation as much as possible to remind them that we are here, we are listening. Yes, we are kind of interviewing them and listening to their knowledge and so forth, but I do think at that time would be a good time to hear if the public had any questions for the Collins Center. They can add some value to us, that's all.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Banerjee.
I was thinking this consultant that's coming the first time is going to give us an overview of different approaches that we can take in order to accomplish the task that we have to do, and that it wouldn't really be, I think the public can ask questions, but I just want to make sure the focus is on our approach so that they're helping us with the approach to this charter.
Yeah, again, whatever we want to look at it, if I'm a consultant and come out and I'm looking for a bid and I give you all the information my first consulting gig and I go back home and didn't get paid, I'm just afraid that they're not going to give us everything we really want, because that's sometimes what happens from a business. Again, we're looking at a business standpoint, so I think it would be important. And again,
helpful.
I think it'll be helpful, and I agree. Again, I just want to get more public participation, and I think that's a time that we might be able to get a little bit.
Not objecting
Yeah.
to public participation.
Yeah.
What I was just trying to clarify the reason for having the consultant.
Ms. Banerjee,
It's
and I
learning
agree.
experience for the commission.
It's like the
Yes.
baker that get hired, and the son, the owner of the bakery's son decides to become the baker, and the real baker never really gave him the true ingredients. So, want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Heavy.
It's important. Public participation.
Okay, any new business? And we set the next meeting for Monday?
7 p.m. the Blonde.
Okay, and now I would like to ask if anybody in the public has anything to say tonight. Yes. Miss Pendexter, yes, who we met at Stapleton School at one of the, yes, sir. Would you like to come up? I believe that mic worked. Okay, so, could you stand so we can hear you, please?
It's being televised.
Oh, Miss Pendexter, it is being televised, so I think the public would like to see you. Thank you.
If you could identify yourself, that'd be helpful.
Vanessa Pendexter. I was just wondering if you want to have a lot of the citizens to come, if you should give it more than 1 week. That was one idea, and I think the
More than 1
consultant.
week's notice, is that what you're, more than 1 week's notice regarding, yes.
Yeah, because
And I
some
think
people
that
have.
problem is we're not going to be on the 18th.
It's okay.
And we miss a couple
If
of
it
weeks.
doesn't work out, it's
Yeah.
fine. And then I think one of the biggest things to focus on is figuring out the process and also the different options. But the process is really important so that it'll be more effective and efficient. But I've enjoyed hearing it kind of take shape. But anyway, I'm excited about this whole commission thing.
Thank you. Yes, yes, sir, come right forward, and please identify yourself. I think it's...
My name is Harold Moran,
Moran, that's-
sometimes called Hank.
Yes, sir. Congratulations on your reelection to town meeting.
Appreciate it. 3 years. I'll send
Yes,
them.
sir.
I really have a question, but I also have something that I think deals with the fundamentals of a process, and it's really a statement that I've used in the past in teaching quality management. It came from a Sperry ad that I saw on a billboard, of all things, that said, "Looking for the solution without listening to the problem is working in the dark." And I think to begin a process, it is important to identify what are the key problems. I understand that there probably are many people that think that the government is the problem. But I think otherwise. I think what is going on in the town among the people of the town is what we ought to look at. And what are the problems that the people in the town are struggling with? The government is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself, whatever government it is. And whether it be a town, whether it be something entirely different, a city, whatever. I think you shouldn't begin with preconceived notions about what the solutions to the problems are without first of all identifying the problems. And I think those can be articulated as a process by having a discussion about what you think they are and establishing some principles, some fundamental principles about what should guide your deliberations that are based on looking at the problems of the town and prioritize those. And based on that prioritization, then begin to develop principles and a structure that will then lead to discussion. There's been discussions about various departments. I think that's premature. I think you as a deliberative body representing all of us need to first look at what the problems are. That's number one. And number two, there was some discussion early on about getting additional financial help from other sources. And it may be a minor point, but it occurred to me is in this, what was the term? I can't remember the adjective about outreach. Robust, I think it was the word.
Correct.
Will it be possible, and it should be, I think, that the sources of those public funds, the funds that are solicited by the board, by the commission, be also made public? Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, if I first of all, if I could.
Yes.
So, Hank, first of all, thank you for your very thoughtful comments and suggestions. I think they're, as one more, well taken. On your last point, the statute says that the commission may receive funds from any and all sources. As a practical matter, it is, the commissions are almost always funded by the municipality, and the statute requires disclosure of any and all funds collected. So any funds that are collected, the commission would have to report those and the sources.
In writing to the city or town clerk.
I'd like to thank Mr. Moran for his comments. One of the things I kept saying beforehand was that we need to look at what is right with our government, what is wrong with our government, and where we want to go. And I think I sort of dropped the ball on that one tonight, and I think that's what we need to do.
I think you articulated it pretty well, Ms. Banerjee. Ms. Dunbrat.
Hello, Linda Dunbrack, Precinct 7. I just had a couple comments. One is, if you're going to interview the town manager, one of the other people that you might consider inviting early is the Board of Selectmen. And that also gets to Mr. Moran's issues about having people diagnose problems. They're a group of authority who are stakeholders, and I think it might be worth talking to them early. They are a group you're going to have to talk to. Obviously, you've got one representative, but there are 5 people that are going to have their own opinions on that. So I guess that's all I have to say. And I guess the other comment is, if you're struggling to find other people other than the one person, maybe you ought to consider just on a contingency, agreeing to just pay them for one meeting even before you decide, so that you can get going on coming up with your curriculum before you lay out your lesson plans. So I guess those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're talking about one consultant. You're talking about rather than just the Collins Center. So I'm just clarifying.
You said pay them for one time, Adam.
Well,
If
no,
we
I
don't
got
like
that. You
them,
were
bring
saying if you're
somebody
having
else
trouble
in.
meeting
Yeah.
with one person, you're saying.
Oh, sorry, with other consultants.
Thank you.
If you can't find more,
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you're saying.
Oh, I didn't know if you were checking that, Mr.
I would just say,
Stefanini.
I don't think that's a bad suggestion. I think we'll get that one meeting for them for free.
So do I.
It may not be exactly best advice to us based on, the comments, but I think it'll be pretty good. There is language in here, and I know the Collins Center is a governmental entity, but there is language in here that says we're supposed to follow procurement law, so.
Not in accordance.
Yeah, no, I understand, because they're an educational facility and they're, okay.
They're a
but
state agency.
I think it'd be cleaner and neater to hear from them, and if we have to after that, do that.
Right.
But
Yeah, let's be prudent with our taxpayers' dollars as well. Please, please, please.
As everybody in this room knows and anybody watching, we have a really big task ahead of us. And I believe that we have a wonderful Board of Commissioners, the 9 people, very experienced in town government, very experienced with dealing with the public and talking with the public and getting input. These are knowledgeable, experienced people, and we must work together, we must work collaboratively to ensure that the charter we produce is something that the people of Framingham will accept, and it will be the best form of government for the people of Framingham. And in saying that, I'd like to ask if the commissioners would all like to make a comment at this time before we adjourn. Have anything to add to that? I think you all agree we've got a tough road ahead of us, but I feel with the people that I've known for quite a long time, we're all willing to put in the very hard work for our community to produce a good product. So if anybody would like to comment, please, now.
I'll start. Well, first I'd like to say thank you to the voters for electing me to the commission. I did serve on the previous commission and I was on the majority side. However, the minority won, so I have some experience sitting on a charter commission. I don't, probably it's more of a penance now than anything that we have to go through, because we're in for a long haul, and I just would urge my colleagues to keep an open mind and listen to the process and understand the process as we go through it and have input in it, because in the end, as the chair said, we have to come up with a product that is good for the community and good for the people. We know how we got here. We know why we're here. So we need to come up with a product that proves that we can find a governance for this community that fits it.
I agree totally with what you said, Dennis. I am a longtime town meeting member. I also serve on the Framingham Housing Authority, and I was born and raised in this town. And years back, when they talked city, I thought you guys were all crazy. I said, why would you want to change Framingham to a city? And then I served on town meeting, and while we have great people on town meeting, I think that I got involved with this because I really think that we have to find something that would work better for all of Framingham. So I do also thank the voters for electing me, and I do understand this very important task that lies ahead for all of us, and I think that we need to come up with something that we can agree on that would be good for the voters of Framingham, because at the end of it all, if we put something up that is not going to get passed, I think that that would be a huge disservice to what we've trying to accomplish here. So thank you.
Respect and communication, that's really going to be vital right now. You're going to hear everybody at the table is going to have something to say, which is going to be important. Listen to that person. If you don't understand what that person's saying and want to dig a little deeper, just ask. Terry, can you go a little deeper for me so I can get an understanding? I kind of think I know where you're going. Adam did that earlier tonight. I kind of think I know where you're going, but can you elaborate so I understand? There's nothing wrong with that. There's 9 of us here all trying to find the right choice for Framingham. Don't be afraid to ask your comrade to your right or left or in front of you, behind you, whatever. Just ask them and communicate with each other. While you're here, talk about the process. If you have questions similar to what we did tonight, because if we find ourselves in a situation where it's a split room, and that's going to happen, there's no question that's going to happen. I think better communication, the ability to be respectful for each other and ask questions and draw out and probe and get the answers we're looking for, that's going to make a better community for us. And ultimately, that's why the community voted for these 9 members here. These are the 9 members that the community voted to be on this commission, and I think their expectations are we're going to do that. So I would hope that if you don't like one of my ideas, ask me to elaborate. If I can, I'll do my best, try to give you my feedback, and I'll take it from there. And I'll be very respectful and open-minded.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I can't add much more to what was said before, other than I'm looking forward to a great team effort and looking forward to working with everybody. Thanks.
Madam Chair, I'd like to start, first of all, by thanking voters for the honor to serve with these 8 folks, and I have great respect in different ways and different skills for each of you. And I'd like to offer a couple of thoughts that are a slightly different way of thinking about this. I think of this often not from the perspective of some of the blunders and foibles that are notorious in our community. And I don't think we need to review those at any great length, if at all, to understand that. We don't need to embarrass ourselves, and we don't need to question the people in the arena, except to the extent that it relates to our peace. But I do think, often, and I was thinking of Valerie, of a Robert Bernard Shaw poem that Robert Kennedy often quoted, which said, "Some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were and say, why not?" And I think for me, part of the process and part of what I see in the strength of the people, the resources in our community, because we live in a great community, are how do we optimize that? So not just thinking about how do we avoid a mistake or how do we make a mistake, but what do we do as a community that helps us organize and facilitate the community optimizing opportunities? Now, there are lots of checks and balances and other things that have to be worked out through that. But to me, I look at lots of communities and the things that we are not doing, and I'm not going to go through them this evening, but I would just ask that we think in those terms, and I would make two simple points. First, that we live in a great community, and I don't think we can ever stop saying that enough or thinking about that enough, but that we need a government that helps us make that community a better place. And I often say to live, to learn, to work, to play, because I think of each of those four buckets as very different things for us as a community. And I believe that the 9 of us coming together, and I think of it in this terms, I think of our local government needs to represent all of us and support, and I think of these things: vibrant neighborhoods, quality schools, safe and secure homes, values our elders, celebrates diversity, invests in small businesses, increases community participation, and cares for those in need. I think of those as check boxes within the category of how do we look at the opportunities that are in front of us. And I suggest we try to avoid all of the discussion we could have of some of the things that have or have not gone exactly as one might not have liked. That's all I have to say.
Ms. Banerjee.
That's a tough act to follow. I would like to thank everybody who voted for me as well. I'm honored to be on this commission. I think that we still need to look at what we have and how it might be improved before we go on to something new, and that's one of the things that I will work to do on this commission, as well as work with my commissioners. I definitely think communication is the key, and we have to ask each other questions, and we have to be open to all sides, to all possibilities.
I'm actually going to kind of go in a slightly different direction, just be practical about a couple of small things. And just one, I actually want to thank Dennis Carter for doing the work that he did on the Collins Center in particular. While people were talking, I was both listening, I was multitasking, and looking at like 19 other Charter Commission articles from different newspapers. And pretty much everybody chooses the Collins Center, which we knew. If this helps, Newburyport in 2010 chose the Collins Center, but the article about it references that they had 2 other consultants. So I don't know whether it's worth reaching out to them to know who the two other people had.
What did you say?
Newburyport. Yes. There's an article in Newburyport from September 2nd, 2010 that just, they referenced that they had 2 other bids. Collins Center was the lowest. Thank you. But that might help. You know, I tend to think for good or for bad, and it can be both. Like, I'm a process person, so I actually look forward to getting a consultant in here to talk, someone who's done this before and can lead us through, who's done 30 of them, and can say, what's the best way to go about this, or what are a couple of different ways of going about this? We only have one chance to kind of get this right, hopefully. So, you know, I want to move efficiently, but I also want to make sure that we move thoughtfully, and kind of with somebody else's wisdom would be great. Can I ask 2 other things from the chair? Before we get out of here, is it possible?
Even a list for me.
Is it possible just to find out if we have a sense of when this is actually going to be rebroadcast, so that we can tell the media before we leave today, and that can kind of get out of here? I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if they know that.
They can't nod that.
They can't
Ron,
nod
can
that.
you stop down?
If even just after the meeting to tell representatives from the media. And then one of the best practices I've seen in meetings like this is to end with the chair or someone just recapping the major things that we talked about. I don't, and I mean that super briefly, like, we decided to do a subcommittee on communication. We decided to do this, like the top 5 things, so that we all
Clerk's
know.
responsibility.
Yeah, I know it is tonight. So, and I can totally do that.
Fun with that.
Madam
But
Chair, I'd be
Jason
happy
took the
to do
notes
that.
tonight, so I would
That
turn it
said
over
he'd
to
be
him.
happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a good practice. I'm happy to do it in my
Absolutely.
clerk's role. But Jason actually kept the notes tonight.
Mr. King.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity certainly to serve on the commission. I haven't had much involvement in the government in the last few years, so it's a great opportunity to get re-involved for me, because previous to that I had quite a bit of involvement in the government, and I had the opportunity, which I appreciate, to lead the government for a number of years, and it gave me a good insight, I feel, into what worked and what didn't work. And I do believe we need to change our government, and that's, I might have came here in a slightly different angle than the rest of you, but I think that's a place that we share, and I don't think we should be, shy about that. I think
Dancing.
What?
Dancing.
around it.
Dance around it. No.
Yeah, right. Maybe that's the way to put it. I think ultimately, I think we need to listen. I think we need to understand what happens now, as I do agree with Hank said about, the quote you made about the solution, etc. But I do think ultimately, I think that we should, embrace that fact that hopefully we can find change, but change that is meaningful, change that is well thought out, change that can be embraced by a lot of people. I may have my favorite approach as to how I would do it if I was sitting here as a Charter Commission member of 1, but I'm not. I'm a Charter Commission member of 9. So I hope we can come to an agreement and a compromise and a collaboration that brings us a change that I do believe we need, but something that a broad group of our citizens can support, because that's really the only way I'll be successful. It's an awful lot of work, as some of you in this room know better than I, to even get to this very point that we are right now. I had the experience 25 years ago. I can't believe it was that long ago, when I went out and collected some signatures with Joyce Tolman and some others, and as we know, that didn't end up particularly well, and our good friend, the late Jack Flinter, did the same thing 5 years later, and again, that didn't work out very well. So I hope that we can change that record, and I think the way to do that is to communicate, collaborate, and come up with something that can gain broad support and bring meaningful change, and I hope I can be a part of that.
Mr. Giambetti just met with Mr. Rigo. This will be broadcast at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, because tomorrow night he has Board of Selectmen and Planning Board. So once again, I apologize. I thought this was live. And
Get it out
Mr. Smith has offered to recap the
Yeah,
meeting,
Mr.
and
Smith.
hopefully all my tasks are included, so I can make a list before I go home tonight. Thank you.
Madam Chair, would you like me to send you a copy of this? I'll type it out and send it to you in the morning,
Thank you.
and Mr. Blummer as well. Okay.
I-
You
may I
got
just
you
say
got
something?
grammatical and spelling for me, Adam, as well? Yes, sir? Okay.
I know that it's
Spanish.
going to be broadcast, but I don't know in the future if we want to tape it, have a
Have it live and
tape-
also, have it
tape-
archived.
have
One of them,
have a tape on the table so that you can,
oh, for ourselves, I'm hoping to have somebody here, thank you, to take minutes. Thank you. Yeah, good idea. I don't know if anybody has any of those machines any longer.
get the video.
Okay, Madam Chair, talked about process tonight with 3 meetings being in the Memorial Building and 1 being outside the neighborhood. Did mention that we want to make sure that we do have it filmed for our government station. 7 o'clock starts. Talked about Chapter 43B tonight. Talked about Monday meetings, 7 or 7:30. Chair's responsible for that. We went through the Roberts Rule with the open meeting law. We talked about posting meetings broadly. We talked about establishing space on the website. Talked about TV and archiving all of the sessions through the government station. And then we talked about the time, the agendas, and the public participation. We then also talked about having Monday, May 9th, as opposed to Monday, May 2nd. Thank you. Talked about the initial funding of $7,500, and that Ms. Mulvey would be responsible for bringing back some information on that. We talked about special acts to adopt. We talked about asking potentially to have council come in to meet with this Charter Commission as well. We talked about 4 subcommittees: structure and style, legislative functions, general government, and communication. We talked about a robust outreach within that communication. Again, I'm skimming the top. I have more notes on, but I'm skimming the top for everybody, okay? We authorized the chair this evening to use her wisdom to find someone wonderful to take our minutes.
We could give you a stipend.
We also authorized the chair and voted this evening to expedite, as Mr. Giambetti mentioned, expedite bringing a consultant into the process. Mr. Cardiff also forwarded some materials this evening from the Edward J. Collins Center also.
That's payment for Jason.
Excellent, excellent. We talked about the next meetings, which were all in the Blondie room. That's okay?
I was distracted by the flying candy. Could you repeat the last one, please?
Yes, we authorized the chair to work with Mr. Cardiff and the consultant. He has passed on some information with regards to the Edward J. Collins Center, and that he did forward that to our chair as well this evening. Talked about bringing them in for an initial meeting also. We then talked about the next meeting scheduled on the 11th, 25th, April 11th, April 25th, both in the Blondie room. May 2nd, May 9th,
No, they're all milk.
May 16th, also in the Blondie room, and then the BLUMER room would be on May 23rd. We talked about bringing in staff, the CFO. We talked about making sure we use that from a knowledge-based standpoint, make sure we have a 9-to-0 process moving forward. We talked about the rebroadcast this evening as well, and further dialogue.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Nice job.
Those, I passed the chocolates by a few. Those are from, fresh from Geneva from my daughter.
They're wonderful.
Just
we
a point that perhaps, I did reserve those rooms, but perhaps we might want to have some discussion about whether we do want to meet like 9 weeks in a row every Monday.
Well, we can
Madam
always
Chair, we have the
cancel them if
18th
change-
off.
We have the 18th.
Plus, we can always change them as we go along.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
So we
think-
could cancel
yes.
from week to week.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so I'll keep,
That makes sense.
Can I ask one thing, though, I think we should do, and I think this will help this board on the, I think if we could, maybe the clerk could do a calendar, and if you know there's going to be dates over the next 7 or 8 that we've sent out, maybe send them to Adam, so when we come with a schedule, we can say, you know what, we're missing 4 or 5 commissioners on one evening, therefore we're not going to host a meeting. This way we can plan it in advance.
I'll actually do it the other way. I'll use this thing called Doodle, where I will send out
Okay.
all the Doodle days. You just fill it in, and it'll show up red or green.
That's a good
Like
idea.
Magnadoodle, okay?
Miss Banerjee.
You may all know each other's emails
yeah.
and phone numbers. but
Oh,
I would
thank you.
love to have a thing, and I have an email that I have created just for this. I can't believe it was available, a new email. I don't know if you want me to do it.
Can I just
How
make,
many emails do
can
you
I
want?
make a comment? I think that's a wonderful idea, and
Do it offline.
are you looking for something? I would say members should talk to each other. I just wanted to just make a note about the open meeting law. 4 members or less does not constitute a problem for the open meeting law. Emails that go to all of us should be sharing general information and should not be used to discuss policy or decisions or anything else, because it would constitute a meeting. And I know,
Yeah, no, I
I
wasn't-
want to make sure everybody was just on the same
Also,
page.
we should mention the serial nature of conversations, too. You can't,
Right,
just
no,
because
of
you
course.
can't have one conversation with another person 8 times with different people.
I was just
is-
thinking that we should each have each other's
We just be very
information.
careful.
Yep.
You know, and Miss Banerjee, I did type it up and left it in the printer, so,
I have
I can
another
s-
email I want to use.
excuse me?
I'll give
You
it.
can email it to
Okay, I'll email it to everybody and get all your phone numbers where you want to be contacted. Okay. I'm sorry about that.
You actually sent this one yesterday with everyone.
Do you want a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
46.
Thank you.
That's funny.